It doesn't say if when, it says but when government becomes this thing, that the people have a right. It is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Now, this is a real radical concept. Right in the political philosophy of the Declaration of Independence, not only are governments established for certain causes, the principles lay out when the people have a right to alter or abolish, and then when a long train of abuses and usurpations continues, it turns into a duty to throw off a government. Again, this goes back to the concept that what the Creator creates, the Creator can destroy. If the people truly are sovereign, and the people truly are the creator of government, then the people also, the buck stops with them about throwing off a government. Abraham Lincoln said, "We the people are the rightful masters, both of the Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution." Now, duty is that which one person owes to another, that which a person is bound by any natural, moral, or legal obligation to pay, to do, or perform. We're bound, made fast by a band, or by chains or fetters, obliged by moral ties, confined and restrained. Obligation, the binding power of a vow, promise, oath, or contract, or of law, civil, political, or moral, independent of a promise. An obligation, that which constitutes legal or moral duty. So what we're saying is that it is their right, it is their duty. We're bound. We have an obligation to throw off the government. This is not an option. According to the principles of the Declaration of Independence, we have no option. When a government abuses and usurps its power to the point where a design is evinced to reduce the people under absolute despotism, then the people have a duty to throw off that government and to provide new guards for their future security. And going back to the very first slide of this presentation, the freemen of America did not wait till usurped power had strengthened itself in exercise, but denied the principle by challenging the precedent that was set in the beginning. It is the first duty of American citizens to take alarm. Now, this sounds real radical, but it sounds radical because of the degree that we've come off the philosophical foundation of America. Now, if we were still operating under these principles, and these principles were being taught in our schools, and we were being educated in the principal philosophy of America, this wouldn't sound radical at all. But the fact that it sounds so radical is evidence in itself of how far we've come off the original foundation. So, this is a revolutionary act for me to get up here and talk like this. But in fact, we have a duty to talk like this, especially when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce the people under absolute despotism. Charles Hammond received a letter from Thomas Jefferson in 1821 that said, quote, "When all government, domestic and foreign, in little as in great things, shall be drawn to Washington as the center of all power, it will render powerless the checks provided on one government on another, and will become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated." So Thomas Jefferson didn't say if all government, he said when all government, understanding that sooner or later this government would evolve into a despotism just as it has. Thomas Jefferson wrote to Gallatin in 1809, "If the public debt should be once more swelled to a formidable size, we shall be committed to the English career of debt, corruption, and rottenness, closing with revolution. If ever this country is brought under a single government, it will be the most extensive corruption, indifferent, and incapable of a wholesome care over so widespread a surface. This will not be borne, and you will have to choose between reformation and revolution. If I know the spirit of this country, the one or the other is inevitable." Okay, the Founding Fathers were able to look into the future. They laid down certain self-evident truths that were considered to be true at all times, in all places, all the time. And they understood by writing these things down that they were sending a time capsule into the future, laying a foundation, a political foundation upon which the American people could always refer when the government became destructive to the end. Jefferson then encouraged, before its venom has reached so much of the body politic as to get beyond control, remedy should be applied. Well, this might have been about 20 or 30, maybe 50 years ago, but the fact that I'm still able to stand up here and have this conversation with you suggests that we still have a little elbow room to work, and so work we will. Jefferson again, "If the state looks with apathy on this silent descent of the government into this gulf, which is to swallow all, We have only to weep over the human character formed uncontrollably by a rod and iron, and as the blasphemers of men is incapable of self-government, becomes his historians. In other words, a failed experiment. So, revolution, the motion of anything which brings it to the same point or state as a revolution of day or night or of the seasons. Ron Paul started a revolution in his last campaign. He wrote a book called Revolution. Understanding the principle of revolution, Ron Paul believes that we need to move back to the original foundation, and we concur. I concur. And when I say revolution, I mean returning back to the original principles that this nation was founded upon. Radical, you say? Again, pertaining to the root or origin, original, fundamental, means an element or simple constituent part of a substance incapable of decomposition. If we move back to the self-evident truths upon which this nation is founded, it is a radical notion, but again, only to the degree that we've come off the original foundation. Now, we have a couple of contradictions going on here that I want to clear up concerning sovereignty and power. Like, for example, you know, we've all heard it said that the word democracy doesn't appear in the Constitution, and a lot of people would argue that we're not a democracy. But at the same time, earlier in this presentation, I demonstrated that the e pluribus unum is a democratic sovereign body politic. So the question is the sovereignty of this nation a collective of individual kings? Is it in fact a democratic sovereignty? And if so, where did this idea come from? What is the source of it? Is this somebody's idea? Is this a philosophy of John Locke? Or is there a place in history where we can demonstrate that this is in fact true? Where did the founding fathers come up with this idea? James Madison said democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. Is America in fact a democracy? Here we have the fourth President of the United States, the author of the Constitution, saying absolutely not. This is not what they had in mind. Alexander Hamilton said, had it been observed that a pure democracy it had been observed that a pure democracy, as it were practicable, would be the most perfect government. Experience has proven that no position is more false than this. The ancient of democracies in which the people deliberated never possessed one good feature of government. Their very character tyranny, the figure deformity. Samuel Adams, one of the founders of the American Revolution, one of the radicals, said, remember, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes and exhausts and murders itself. There was never a democracy that did not commit suicide. Alexander Tylen, in the book The Fall of the Athenian Republic, 2,000 years prior, said a democracy is always temporary in nature. It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. A democracy will continue to exist up until the time that voters discover that they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidate who promises the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that every democracy will finally collapse due to loose fiscal policy, which is always followed by a dictatorship. Did the founding fathers in fact set up a democracy in this country, or did they set up a republic? How do we reconcile an e pluribus unum, a sovereign body politics of individuals, compared to the Constitution that says the Constitution guarantees to every state a republican form of government? John Randolph Tucker gives us a clue. He said that barbarians cannot hold free institutions when given to them, because the forces essential to maintain social order over savage natures would destroy freedom. The supremacy of moral force in the heart of the individual man is essential to his freedom over the external control of government. If man will control himself by self-government, he may be free. If he will not, government must limit his freedom by such power as is needed to help him in order. What this is saying is, there's a natural law of balance and order in the universe. And to whatever degree I don't control myself, an external force is going to come along and attempt to control me. But to whatever degree I align myself with the natural forces of the universe, we'll call that the will of our Father, the will of the Creator. To that degree that I can be free because I'm walking in resonance with the will of the Creator. But whatever degree I shift off of that, an external force must come in and then put me back in alignment. This is the natural law of the natural order. Government then becomes this tool when a collective body politic of kings lose their way and begin to operate in derogation of the natural law and as a result, a government is then created that becomes the image and likeness of this body politic that ultimately destroys them. So it's